Hello and welcome to Inconceivable. I'm William.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Gordon.
And we'd be honored if you would join us. That is a Star Wars reference, ladies and gentlemen. If you did not notice, I'm sorry I don't sound like James Earl Jones, but that's the best I got.
And if you know what that is, you're a nerd. Which means you're in the right place.
Exactly. Or, a geek. Because geek.
I mean, kind of.
So, one thing. Shut up.
Oh, okay, just that one thing? Okay.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Starting off, since actually I'm starting ironically, so I will not be shutting up.
Oh, boy, well.
I'm going to be talking about, we've touched on this every now and then, about how we've got new shows that we're looking forward to, but they're unfortunately going to be on their own streaming services. Yeah. So we've got Disney coming out with theirs, which I think makes the most sense out of all the ones that's been announced, because especially with them now acquiring Fox, that's a lot of content. Mm-hmm. So a lot of reason
more
to have
content than some of the other sites that are going to be coming out with streaming services, I think.
Because we've also got DC, and
which
DC
still makes sense, I'd say, but at the same time, I don't know. With Disney, like you said, it makes a lot more sense because they have so much that they're able to give out. But with DC, I don't know. I've heard bad things about their streaming service, but good things about their show. But so far, I think they only have the one show, which is Titans.
So here's the thing: they only have the one new show. Actually, that's not technically correct. They have Krypton as well, which I haven't
is that
seen.
just come out?
It's been. I believe it's being released. Going forward, I haven't watched any of it.
Because wasn't it on a random TV network?
I think it's on Sci-Fi.
I completely forgot about that show. Not gonna lie.
We talked about that show on here.
It's like, hey, Superman, it's grandfather.
It's supposed to be pretty good.
As all shows are.
Some shows, if it's good, it usually continues. Except certain Joss Whedon helmed. R.I.P. Firefly. But no, so they have that. They have their entire backlog of DC animated series and animated movies.
See, that's worth it.
And they have, I want to say it's their entire catalog of digital comics as well.
Okay.
So
that's fair. So
that makes it sound more worth it. I forgot about the animated movies and TV shows. Wait, is it just the movies or is it the TV
I believe it's both.
Right.
Because if it's the TV shows, then I'd say it's worth it just to go for those because a lot of the original stuff is pretty great.
That being said, very good shows, of course.
Yeah.
But just like the same thing for Disney, I don't want Disney to rely on existing content for you to pay for this service that you were going to pay for originally. Like, I want to see new content that you can only find out here. So, for instance, a great example, for the first time, YouTube Red, now YouTube Premium, has finally produced something.
To YouTube Premium?
I liked YouTube Red. I don't know why they switched to Premium.
I feel like YouTube Premium is more like it tells you more what it's supposed to be.
I guess.
YouTube Red, you if you're on YouTube, you get it. Mm-hmm. But if you tell someone, "Oh yeah, I'm subscribed to YouTube Red," they're like, "What the hell is what is that?"
Yeah.
But if you're like, "Hey, I have a YouTube Premium subscription," they're like, "Okay, I kind of know what that is. Right. What does that mean?"
It's like the ultra version, like the high end version that you're able to have if you pay a price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get that. I just, at least as someone who likes planning out these things, it's just like, oh, cool, you took a name that's original, it makes sense with your platform, and now you've just made it into something generic. You might as well have called it YouTube Plus.
That's fair.
Well, Netflix doesn't have that problem though, because we all know that Netflix is it's Netflix. You have to pay for it.
Yeah. Where
you're either streaming or you're getting the DVDs mailed to you, which they still do.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm like I'd want to do that though. Like maybe, but at the same time, it's just as easy to go and just find something like at Redbox or that sort of thing.
Yeah, Redbox has kind of taken over that portion of their company as far as because it's.
I think so, because you can literally just go out and drive and then you can get it and then come back, as opposed to waiting. How long would you have to wait for something from Netflix? Because I've never done it before.
It's 2 days. So granted, not long, but still longer than going out and getting it from your local Walgreens or whatever.
Fair.
Okay.
But you can also, again, I don't have the DVD subscription service, so I don't know for sure. But I believe you can queue up a list of the DVDs that you want. Like it's a watch list, so you're queuing up everything, and then as you send DVDs back, they'll send you the stuff that's next on your list and all that sort of thing.
Is the DVD subscription services that like you have to subscribe for that on top of already having Netflix?
Yes.
Well, that doesn't sound fun at all.
No. It doesn't sound fun, but hard as that may be to believe, but there are some places in the country that don't have like high-speed internet.
So, okay, yeah, that's fair.
So like this is especially true of video games in general. You're not getting digital sales, and you're not getting a lot of online play. And if games are broken, like if they have to have a day one patch, people that are in the middle of the country get screwed because they're not going to be able to download the patch, and then they just have a broken game.
I didn't even think about that. Like I've thought about places that have like low speed internet, but then like when I think about streaming or video gaming, then it must really suck to be in those situations.
I would imagine.
So that
especially if you're like a geek like us.
That brings an interesting point. All these shows that you can only get exclusively with their streaming specific service, those are going to be shows that people who don't have a good internet connection may never be able to watch, simply because it involves having a good internet connection.
Something that I've noticed is that, so with Netflix to come out with original shows, you'd think that those shows are exclusive on the Netflix streaming website.
Yeah.
But I'm actually seeing that you're able to buy the shows on DVD or Blu-ray like in stores now, which is I don't know if that's a more recent thing.
So like Netflix produced shows, or
Netflix produced shows.
Say
like
House of Cards.
I think maybe House of Cards. I think I saw
Orange Is the New Black, maybe.
Probably that one. But was that like originally from Netflix?
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah. That was their second project.
I mean, I know they have,
because I think I've seen some of the Marvel ones out, like maybe Daredevil.
Interesting.
Yeah. But that could be because it's a license agreement and not an original. Whereas like House of Cards and Orange Is the New Black, completely Netflix's content. But
if it's licensed with Marvel?
Exactly. There's like a separate agreement there. So it's not like, yes, it's their show because they made it, but it's not their properties. Where House of Cards, Orange Is the New Black, completely their own creation, their own properties, and their own rights to use it. Where for the Marvel stuff, it's only the rights to use it and for their content. So I feel like there could be other asterisks to that content.
Sure.
Yeah.
And also, there's something really cool about having, like, especially a collector's edition or like a steel book. Of like a given show. So the fact is, so Netflix doesn't really make sense to me as like a business model, because it's not obvious to me that having original programming is going to get you a lot of new viewers. It just seems like it's going to retain the ones that you already have.
Okay.
I don't know if Netflix is growing at all.
Well, they release trailers and such on YouTube, which might make people be like, okay, I actually might want to try this out because this looks really, really good.
I feel like that's not. I feel like the YouTube trailers are still for the Netflix audience, though.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, it's just like.
Well, you don't go to Netflix to watch a trailer.
No. In fact, that's the one thing I don't really want to do when I'm on Netflix. You're just leafing through, and if you wait too long,
I know,
it
starts
playing. I didn't want this.
What I also don't like is like when you just wait on something and it's a movie or TV show that you've watched, and then it starts playing this generic music that isn't part of the show or movie, exactly. Like they do it for Lord of the Rings. And I'm just like, that is not the music. You guys switch, you cowards.
It's especially for older movies where they don't have anything set up already, and they don't have like a specific trailer to show you. They'll have like generic music in the background.
I've noticed that with some stuff.
Sometimes
wait a minute,
they will
not
have
unique.
it.
Yeah. So I guess a good thing to establish here is that I have Hulu and Netflix, and so do you. I
have the Netflix, you have the Hulu, and we share.
We share, yeah. I additionally,
as roommates do,
for my own purpose, have YouTube Premium, which I've been enjoying very much. In fact, there was a point where I switched my cards, so it didn't auto recharge the card, so I was lazy and basically didn't have YouTube Premium for a month, and I hated it so much. After not having ads on YouTube for like a year and then suddenly having ads again, I was like, this is awful. Because the thing is that it's different. On our TV, I don't have it hooked up because I like having my own preferred search results on my phone as preference to if I put it on the TV, then we got everybody's search results now also on my phone, so that's why I haven't hooked it up.
Right.
But the thing is that on the TV, it's a different situation where you're a little bit more...
I'd say you're more relaxed and you're doing some other stuff while getting ready.
So having an ad isn't as inconvenient where you're on your phone, you're probably multitasking, you're doing all these things. Sometimes I'll just not even watch the video. I'm listening to a conversation, so then I put it in my content, my content. I put it in my pocket. I don't know.
You're putting your content in your pocket.
And then an ad comes on, and then I have to take it out of my pocket, unlock the phone. Well, not unlock the phone because it would have to be on if you didn't have premium. But then skip the ad and do that whole thing because some ads, if it's not a quick ad, then you have to press skip or it's a 5-minute ad, So it was just so annoying. And then on top of that, not being able to close the app and still listen to the videos, I also really miss that.
They keep bugging me to get premium every time I accidentally block my phone.
Check it out. I'm like, no thanks.
So
maybe later.
Has anyone else noticed that YouTube is coming out with more ads per video? Like they have it right in the middle of certain videos that don't need any.
This is especially an issue when you're watching Critical Role, which I've mostly been listening to the podcast because it's easier.
But on the video format, you must have a million ads.
There are 5 ads in the middle of the video. I'm like, I really...
Because it's like a 3-hour video, right?
I have 3 or 4 ads in a 5-minute video. I'm like, guys, this is not worth... Come on!
Facebook's even worse, though, which is bad because at least on YouTube you realize, okay, but this is supporting the creator. But on Facebook, it's this is just for Facebook. These ads aren't going to the creators. It's going back to Facebook. So I feel like having a ton of ads on a Facebook video is way more annoying than a YouTube video.
That's fair. And also, a lot of the... if you have an ad blocker on your browser, a lot of the times it'll block the YouTube ads entirely.
True. But that's only on a desktop.
That's true.
That actually used to be the main... It's weird to think now, but looking back on it, that's where people watched Netflix and YouTube the most, was on a computer. Now, it's far majority of the phone. So
phone or game console, I would say.
So... And both of those platforms, I'm sure you could figure some way to hack the system.
You would really have to go out of your way to come up with an ad blocker for one of those two things.
I think way more effort than it's worth. But yeah, so with YouTube Premium, I'm still getting used to saying that, they've crossed the boundary of not only just having the benefits of closing your phone, still being able to listen, and no ads. Now you can watch exclusive content to YouTube, and they finally, which I feel like is the tipping point for making it worth it or not worth it for a lot of people, and they finally got a hit, which was Cobra Kai. Talked about that earlier in the year. Highly recommend it. Still, to this day, my favorite new show of this year, and I can't believe it's from YouTube. Yeah,
and that was one of the ones that kind of affected me too, because I'm trying to watch it, but I'm trying to watch it downstairs, which is not logged into your account. So I would just be calling up to you guys, being like, "Hey, please help me! I want to watch the show."
So I also forgot, on top of YouTube, I also have a Rooster Teeth subscription to watch their exclusive content, because their content's half and half. Some of their videos they release to the public to YouTube, and the other half is only through their website, which I think is smart. What about you? What do you have for app streaming services?
I have Netflix, I have Hulu, and then I use Amazon Prime a fair amount.
I really like Amazon Prime. It comes it has a lot of stuff. I feel like it has the stuff that YouTube or Netflix got rid of, like the Doctor Who or TV shows like that. I'm just like, hey, I want to watch this. It's not on Netflix. Let's try Amazon, and they have that.
And that's kind of, I think, how it works. Is you're not necessarily going to find a lot of overlap, because the licenses run out, and it's you only get one.
I'm sure the people like Netflix and Hulu love when they can make it exclusive. So, for instance, I'm pretty sure Netflix has a lock on The Office. If you want to watch Office streaming,
if they did not have the Office, they would lose half of their viewers.
Incorrect, but I get your point.
For
a quarter.
For a long time, Hulu, I think it still might have exclusive right to Community, which was a big point for going to Hulu, because that was, again, like The Office, where it's totally rewatchable. Same thing with Community for me, so it always made me go back to their service.
Again, the great thing about Hulu is that it comes out with stuff that was fairly recent. I'm able to watch shows that are coming out as they're coming out, and then they're putting the episode on to Hulu the next day. With Netflix, you have to wait months and months for them to come out with the entire season,
and that's where they're trying to find
with. I'd say Netflix is good about putting out big hit movies, and Hulu's good at coming out with the recent episodes of TV shows and stuff like that.
TV shows are definitely Hulu's strength.
Some other stuff, and with Amazon Prime, I feel like they have movies that you haven't really heard of or haven't heard a lot about, but are really, really decent, and also a lot of really good TV shows.
I feel like... so the thing about Netflix is I don't think it gets really good movies, at least recent ones. It'll get like B-tier movies.
Maybe, but they've come out with Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther.
I want to say so. Two things. One, I think it's part of the deal that Marvel has, or that Disney has with Netflix to produce their Marvel content. And I think once their streaming service kicks in, that's going to be gone.
Yeah, I've noticed, especially Disney and Marvel movies has been coming out much quicker than other properties on Netflix specifically, as far as like both A titles and recent titles. I feel like a lot of them have been attributed to either Marvel or Disney, both being the same thing.
Right. And there are also a lot of Marvel movies that haven't been on Netflix. Like, if you look at it, they had, for a while they had Civil War.
Did they take it off?
It might still be on there. I haven't really been looking for them because I don't watch Marvel movies on Netflix. But they had Civil War, they had Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok, and I think they added Doctor Strange, and they had Infinity War. But the thing is, they don't
have Infinity War, do they?
No, I'm pretty sure.
I'm gonna look it up now.
You're right. It is just Thor Ragnarok. I thought they had Infinity War for some reason.
I'm gonna look this up. You keep talking.
Pretty sure it's not. Don't quote me on that because
no, it's okay. I want to know what they have on there.
But the thing is, they don't. I want to say they don't have any of the older movies.
Right. Yeah.
Like.
They used to have the original Avengers and Captain America on there.
Avengers, you're probably correct. For some reason, I feel like they haven't.
I feel like they've had the Iron Man ones for a while too.
They also have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
That's true,
but not
they
the first one.
They don't have the first one. See, that's
never
what
the first
what I'm
one.
Thinking.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking because the ones that are both
the
really good, the ones that are really good and also really successful, they're not going to put on there. They're going to want to save that for their DVD subscription service.
Again,
or for rentals and stuff.
You're probably right about that, but one of the older videos or movies that they have is Blade 2. So you don't have Blade 1 on there, but you got Blade 2.
Blade 2. They do have a lot of sequels on there.
Yeah.
So they get you in that regard. But like one of the movies that if I wanted to watch a Marvel movie and I didn't own any of them, Winter Soldier would be one of my top picks.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And Winter Soldier, I can't recall having seen on Netflix anytime I've looked for it. It might have been.
Maybe I think it might have been before I actually had Netflix.
Yeah,
like when I had Netflix, but it didn't really matter to me because I already bought the movie like right when it came out.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, things like having the second Guardians of the Galaxy, but not the first one, specifically has really annoyed me. Because not that I don't like the sequel, but the fact that the second one is so readily available and not the first one makes me really want to see the first one because I can't watch it.
Right, exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like, if this is if you've been living under a rock and haven't seen a Marvel movie, if you're going to start watching Marvel movies, Netflix is not the place to do it because it's mostly sequels and stuff that came out later on.
And especially Guardians of the Galaxy. That would be one of my top 3 picks for an introductory Marvel movie.
And if you're going to watch one Marvel movie, Guardians of the Galaxy might be the one to pick.
Yeah, and Black Panther is pretty well tied with the other movies. Not too much, but enough, I'd say.
In terms of box office or in terms of quality?
In story, I'd say, because it's...
I disagree.
Well, it's coming right off of the Winter Soldier, so not too much, but it has that, and then it has the... it has Ulysses Claw.
Civil War.
Civil War, yeah, Civil War. So it has Ulysses Claw.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's right after Civil War.
Because Black Panther shows up in Civil War, and he's hunting Bucky and that sort of thing.
That's the one.
And then, again, they have Ulysses Claw, who's first introduced in Age of Ultron, which isn't a very big character, but it's his connection... Well, I guess his connection is kind of explained in the movie.
Yeah, like you don't need to have seen...
So I guess not. I take it back, because I was also thinking about Agent Ross. Is that his name? Martin Freeman in the Marvel movie.
Yeah, that's Agent Ross.
Yeah.
Not related to Thunderbolt Ross.
I want to point out, this is a much nicer Ross.
Secretary Ross.
One thing that I'd like to point out is that one thing that I'm worried about is that one of the main appeals to wanting to use Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon to replace cable is because the cost difference is crazy. Even though you're getting 3 services, they average about $10 to $15 each.
Yeah.
How much is cable?
About $70, I'd say, for the average person to have a decent one. Because usually it comes bundled with your internet. So I'm saying it's the same cost as your internet because it's kind of inseparable. So I'm just going to say it's that same cost.
I think it's like... I think internet is slightly less... I think if you bundle it in, it's less than it would be to get them separately.
It is, because they really want you to have cable. But I feel like that's the guideline. It's like, okay... Lowest, you get cable for $70. That's what I get it for. That's the lowest package that cable comes with. And I feel like...
But internet's included in that?
Yes.
Okay.
That being said, if you're also seeking out cable and weren't worrying about internet, if you wanted cable worthwhile, it'd still also be around $70, I feel like.
Okay. Interesting.
So if we use $70 as per month as a margin, if Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, $15 each, you're looking at $45 a month. Still a $30 gap, which is still worthwhile. Throw in Disney and DC. Let's say because they're new and they're trying to be competitive, they're $10 a month. That's an extra $20. Now there's only $10 separating the two, and all of a sudden you're starting to think, is this really worth it? And then you throw in your other things. So some people have Crunchyroll, some people have Verve, some people have Rooster Teeth, like me. I feel like everybody's going to have their one more niche content provider that they pay for, and that's going to be at least another $10.
Also, Amazon Prime, that's more like
it is multi-service.
So it's more like $9 or $10 a month if you divide it. It's usually like 100.
Right.
I think it's going up.
It's like 120.
But like it was $99 a year.
Yeah. It's going up. Yeah.
And if you pay monthly, it's more. But like it is.
But the way I look at it, just like with the cable, is that regardless if it's purposeful or not, it's still a bill that you're monthly having to pay, basically, and you only have so much money a month.
Right.
So regardless, I'm treating it more as a monthly expense and not as a monthly service specifically for video, because that's how kind of I look at Netflix and Hulu, is like a utility for like my bills.
Essentially.
And same thing with Amazon, that's the way I treat my music service, so that's the way I'm going to treat all those video service. But unlike music, where you can get all your music under one platform, whichever one you choose, iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play,
very close,
you can be happy with just one of those. For video, for the most part, for the longest time, we've been very content with Netflix and Hulu, and now the recent addition of Prime has kind of been filling in the gaps, and for most people, they already have Prime, so it's just been like, oh, cool.
I can just watch movies on it.
I forgot about that. Like, I was using Prime to buy stuff, and then have it sent to my door, and I'm like, oh, I can watch videos too?
Yeah.
Cool.
So for most people, that's not the main objective of getting said service. But of course, with Disney and DC's entries, it's specifically for video. That's the main objective there. So that changes the context. So basically, for people who are looking... Basically, the reason why we've been able to do so many services is because you've been looking at replacing a bill. As this is an alternative. But now it's crossing that boundary, so now it's not becoming as relevant, as far as price-wise. And you're taking the edge off of one of the most competitive parts of this field. And this is just the beginning, because I feel like these will be successful, but only just, and it could be successful enough to launch ventures from other companies who will also at this point be more cash grabs, if anything.
Right.
I feel like these two companies, especially because they're looking at original content, are really driving for quality here. But I feel like any company that tries to jump in on this train or yank their content from Netflix and Hulu and try to build something independent, it's going to be solely based on money and money alone.
Right.
And that's going to drive.
They're going to have to have a massive catalog of content just to be able to make a dent in the market. One thing. A couple things. The first thing is, I feel like the idea that most people are going to want the content from all of the subscription service at once, I think we're outliers on that. I think most people don't have time to consume the amount of content that they want from a given service, let alone from like multiple different services. So I think it mostly comes down to like people watching movies, or no, people watching TV. Like, if you're watching TV, you're going to decide which, like, you may not have multiple services. You may decide, okay, the TV that I want to watch is on Hulu, or I'm really interested in Netflix's original programming, so I'm going to stick with Netflix, or I'm really digging Amazon Prime, not really interested in what Hulu has to offer, so I'm not going to deal with that. So you're going to pick and choose which ones are giving you what you want. In terms of movies, I don't think that Netflix is good if you aren't particular about what you're watching and you just want to watch whatever, because you can spend hours just scrolling through whatever Netflix has to offer, and it's probably not going to be great, regardless. I mean, there are some gems in there, some of Netflix's movies are percentage-wise. Really percentage-wise. So, like, if you want to watch something specific, you're better off going to Amazon, Google Video, renting it. I forget what my other thing was.
Well, if I may interject, you can think about what your thing was. What I was thinking was, like, yes, you're getting all these services, but you're, again, like you said, like, you're going for specific reasons for specific shows that you want to watch. Like, okay, I like this, and this, and you can cancel those at any time. With cable, basically, you're buying the whole package, and you have to filter through that stuff to watch the things that you want to watch. With streaming services, it's more particular, and then you can cut out the things that you don't like, and then you can narrow it down. If there's like a network or a streaming service that you don't care for, or it's starting to get worse and worse, you can just cut it out. With cable, it's like, no, I still got to stick with it because of this show or this show.
The other thing I wanted to point out was, as streaming services are rising to prominence, you have other aspects of TV trying to get in on the market. So, for instance, I'm sure that each of the major sports networks have their own streaming service that you can subscribe to, to just get that. And I'm sure, or I would imagine that it's a similar price to your Netflix or your Hulu or what have you. The other thing is, and I completely forgot where I was going with that, but so I think in general, cable TV is kind of on the outs, and I think they're panicking a little bit. So they're kind of trying to jump into the market.
That's a good thing. But another thought that I also like to leave on is not about what does this mean for cable, but I think it's a bigger picture and what this means for content in general. Because another thing that's important to think about as we move on from this is that we're dealing with a finite market here, because it's demanding money up front. Say you have $100 for budget for content that you're purchasing per month. One thing that's been really big recently, especially with places like Patreon, is that you're helping independent creators fund their projects and allowing them to get to a point where they can fund themselves and such. These big companies, like, say, Disney, it's not worried about money, but yet they're going to make you pay more for the content that you were already paying for in different outlets.
Right.
And that's and because of the subscription format it's going to be taking from that pool of money you would put elsewhere as far as one-time things like Twitch or Patreon. And to me, that's also a concern. I think it's also, this isn't just bad for cable, but I think it's bad for content in general, as you are now eventually going to be deciding where to put your money for content is going to be a much bigger battle than it used to be in the coming years.
Okay.
And it has me worried.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and especially considering, one thing to kind of think about is, as new streaming services are launched, if you will, if there's a market for them, like if they take their content off of the streaming services that they already have and start their own, if they're successful, they'll continue forward, and hopefully there'll be more content, and people will have to choose where they're going to go, and that could be kind of a pain and heartache and all that sort of thing. But if it's not successful, it's just going to get redistributed back to the streaming services that were already there.
This is all presuming that everything works out.
Right.
So, yeah, cool. So with that, Alex,
I think I'll switch over to my thing then. So, something that I've had my eye on for a little while, I've been meaning to talk about, is the new live-action series that Lucasfilm has in production, which is The Mandalorian. For people who don't know what a Mandalorian is, it is basically a super commando in the Star Wars universe. It's like a super commando culture that... So it's kind of iffy with the new lore, because the expanded universe was kind of put aside as legends.
Yeah.
So some of it might be true, some of it might not be true. But basically, the way I know it is Boba Fett and Jango Fett. It's basically based off of them. So first you see Boba Fett in The Empire Strikes Back. He has this very cool armor, and people are very intrigued by it. And then basically after that, the expanded universe takes Boba Fett and creates him into this iconic character, and is more than just a guy in some armor. He there's a backstory behind his armor. There's a backstory to the culture and everything. Then you go back, and I don't know how to explain it exactly, because again, I don't know what is canon, what is not canon.
Yeah, it's tricky.
But basically what this is that it's based off of so the TV show is going to be set after the events of Return of the Jedi. So it's before The Force Awakens, before the First Order. I think it's supposed to be 3 years after Return of the Jedi. Okay. So the Empire has fallen, the New Republic is being set up, and the Mandalorian, which is what the story revolves around, is a lone gunfighter out in the outskirts of the galaxy, just walking, basically doing his thing. Again, that's our premise, basically. That's what we know so far. We know a lot of the directors that are going to be a part of it, and a lot of them are very good, very decent, or at least names that I know, or that if I looked up, I'm all right, those are movies that I've heard about and that they're really, really good.
Yeah.
But I guess for me personally, I have my eye on this show because I really like the culture that the character is based off of. The Mandalorians. They are
or rather the culture that the character spawned in the expanded universe.
Basically, yeah, because it's all it's all based off of Boba Fett, but it's not in a way, because it's his armor. But then in the expanded universe that is now canon, we have heard things that say, oh, he just stole that armor, oh, his father Jango Fett just stole that armor, so he's not what a Mandalorian is. And if you've watched the Clone Wars TV show, we see a little bit of what Mandalore is.
And what it used to be.
And it's explained and expanded on even further in Star Wars Rebels. Now, I think they got some stuff right. I think they got some stuff really wrong, personally, because the Mandalorians is like a warrior culture, basically. They live to be warriors and fighters and mercenaries, basically. But in the Clone Wars, they kind of try to abandon that culture and be a pacifist society, which, when we first found out about it, really annoyed a lot of us fans.
We were pretty upset.
Yeah, we're just
that was not what we signed on for.
This is not okay. Yeah. So I'm interested in seeing what they do with this story, because again, being a hardcore Star Wars fan, but I don't even know what that means anymore, because hardcore Star Wars fan for me is all right, I've read a lot of the books, I know a lot of the characters, even though that they aren't real in the what is canon right now. That's what I see as a hardcore Star Wars fanboy, I guess. So I'm interested in seeing what they do with this, and I mean, I don't want to be ranting, talking about it a lot, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it, because it's going to be. So, I believe it's going to be on the Disney streaming service, or the Star Wars streaming. Is it? I don't think it's Star Wars.
No, it's Disney.
It's Disney. Yeah, it's going to be on the upcoming Disney streaming service that's coming out late next year. They've started production on the TV series, but we don't know when exactly it is coming out, so I'm assuming that it's going to be coming out within the next year or two. Because it's going to come out on that streaming service, which comes out late next year, so it might be
debut programming.
If so, then they might do really good, or they'll probably crash. Their system will crash.
I like to say a piece that's not based on the lore, because I'm not as well informed of the lore, but one thing that I am very invested in is the fact that this is Star Wars' first entry into a TV series.
A live-action TV series.
Yeah, which is going to be... Yeah, I should specify. Yeah, my bad.
They have had plans for it in the past, but nothing's really come of it.
And it's going to be monumental for the franchise as a whole, because I think that Star Wars... I mean, we've seen it with the Clone Wars, makes an excellent serialized content.
It can be, yeah.
And so I'd love basically Star Wars to get that Game of Thrones treatment, and see where they can take it.
And the thing about Star Wars is, when George Lucas created it, his idea was, I want to make a serialized, like the
it was never
old,
just one movie.
Right. It was supposed to be like in sequence, like these things happen. It's supposed to have this flavor. It's like the Flash Gordon movies or whatever. I don't know if it was a TV show or I think it was also a comic. Yeah. But like the whole like it comes out, it's like they're episodic, like they all tie in together and like it's all supposed to be connected.
Always focused, like Star Wars has always been focused on big picture stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is interesting because with this one, it's not going to be based off of the big picture, I don't believe, because they're going to be on the outskirts of the galaxy. It's going to be this one guy going about. Again, I don't know much of the story, but it sounds pretty cool because if you know Mandalorians or like for Star Wars fans, you hear the word Mandalorian, you're like, okay, these guys are cool. So if you hear that there's going to be a TV series about them, then you're starting to get excited. But again, it's just one character that we know of so far. But even watching that as a live-action character that focuses on that as opposed to just seeing them as like a side character in the movies or in the TV show, that gets me hyped, basically. Now,
for a lot of people who has only just watched the movies, the Mandalorians may not seem like that big of a deal outside of Boba and Jango. However, and I'm sticking with canon content here, if you've watched Star Wars The Clone Wars, they've done a lot of stuff talking about Mandalorians. How's the Clone Wars itself changed Mandalorians?
Again, so when listening to Dave Filoni, who was like producer and director of Star Wars The Clone Wars, a lot of it.
And Rebels as well, right?
Yeah, Rebels and Resistance right now. He explained that a lot of the lore is real that we've heard from the stuff that isn't canon anymore, specifically, or the legend stuff.
They're just picking and choosing from it. And
basically, they're meshing and molding.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, we're taking some of this, we like this. Yes, this did happen. Now they're trying to come up with a Mandalorian society that is more peaceful. Like, they don't want to go back to their,
their warlike
roots based. Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah, I guess they're trying hard, and they took a sect or a segment of the Mandalorian culture, which is more extremists, I'd say, or extremists, which is called
extremist is the Iron Man.
Yeah, it's when you glow and you can burn stuff and you breathe fire. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, it's pretty close,
Potato.
One's extreme and one's extreme with fire,
Yeah,
extremely hot.
Extremists, which are called the Death Watch, which are they're like, would you say that they're like the bad stepbrother of the Mandalorians?
They're
the ones that Mandalorians,
like radical Mandalorians.
Yeah, because Mandalorians are mercenaries basically, and like
well, okay. So here's the thing.
They're clans too.
So there's a difference between the things that were kind of set up in the expanded universe and what they did for Clone Wars. And I think one of the major differences was in the expanded universe, like the Mandalorian culture not only was a warrior culture, but it was also a mercenary culture, and everyone had like their own unique thing. The whole one of the premises was that Mandalorian culture accepted anyone. Like, it didn't matter what race you were, what gender you were. It only mattered if you were willing to like buy into this like warrior culture to like and to like raise children in this culture, like you can be grafted into the Mandalorians regardless of who you are, as long as you are a proven warrior and you're willing to like buy into the ethos of it.
Basically, they're very strongly attached to the belief that family and clans is everything.
I'm not sure if that's, well, race-wise, I think the new Mandalorian culture is exclusively human. I think that's correct.
That's what they explained. What Dave Filoni explained. He said it's not a mishmash of cultures and like different societies so much. It's more like warrior military-esque based, I suppose.
But the difference between expanded universe and Clone Wars is that rather than being individuals who are mercenaries for like are mercenaries to different people, the Mandalorian culture is, we're Mandalorian super commandos, we're an army, you can hire this army, like, period.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And that's what the Separatists do in the TV show, and then they can't do Dooku betrays them.
I think the thing that puts them in, I think they've always been considered on a more negative light because they've been much more utilized by the Separatists.
Well, not only that, they have come in contact, and they've basically, there's been a lot of conflict between them and the Jedi. So there's going to be no love lost between them and the Jedi. And again, I haven't watched all of Star Wars Rebels, but they do actually flesh it out more as there's certain clans that come together, and there can be a specific leader if they have a certain thing. Which in the expanded universe, like there was someone called the Mandalore, which is like the top tier, like the
big sounds like pretty primo.
An elected official
the one who
speaks for the disparate clans.
The one who proves him or herself as the leader of all of the Mandalorians. Like if this guy calls on you, you have to answer. That's it, basically.
From wherever you are in the galaxy.
It's like if you're a Mandalorian, you gotta go. That's just how it works.
Speaking about Mandalorians specifically, and as someone who is knowledgeable about the expanded universe, given where they are right now, what is your thoughts?
I think that they're going back towards being more of the mercenary, because again, looking at the story that they're coming up with here for the TV show, it looks like it's not like a specific army that you can hire. It's one guy. It's a guy who's going around, and I'm guessing he might be like a gun for hire. It looks that way. So I think they're going back to making Mandalorians, or specific Mandalorians, more unique, as opposed to being a generic army that you can train and then be sent to battle if you have enough credits.
So here I have a couple of thoughts on this. The one thing is the through line for the Mandalorians, I think, goes like this. You start off with like a group of super commandos, like the highest trained, the best armed and armored, like mercenaries money can buy, and then eventually you transition from that to the pacifist people that are just trying to like make economic decisions and trying to keep their people safe and like closed off and like isolationist, trying not to get involved, that sort of thing. And then it transitions like I think it's at the end of the Clone Wars, or at least at the end of one of the arcs.
Pretty close.
The Death Watch takes over and starts the process of returning the Mandalore to the Super Commando kind of aspect of their lives. And then from there, I think after a certain point, I think it would make sense if that kind of phrase a little bit. So like, it's not as how do I want to say this? It's not as structured. Like you still have the warrior subculture, but it's not. They're not part of a group necessarily. Like they're hiring themselves out individually. Like some of them are breaking off. They're exploring their individualism.
They do have a couple characters in Rebels like that
are kind of doing their own thing.
Well, yeah, or some of them they have to leave because either the Empire hires them out, and then they're like, no, we don't want to work for the Empire. They suck. So we basically go off and do our own thing. One of them being Sabine Wren, who is one of the main characters in the TV show. Like she has to leave her clan basically because of something that happened,
and she's very much not one of the.
Not a typical Mandalorian.
Not one of the, okay, I'm wearing blue and gray, and that's kind of
No. She is she's into very having, she colors her armor, like, every season. She's one of those people.
It changes like my hair, you know?
Yeah, she does that, too. Yeah, every single season, I think.
You know she has a Tumblr blog.
Pretty much. And that's one of the things that I do appreciate about Star Wars Rebels. Again, I have not watched the entire show, but I've seen snippets of it, and I've watched enough of the clone, like the Mandalorian parts of it, to know that it looks like they're going back to the roots of being like, all right, they're different clans that are very firmly like they focus very strongly on family, and they can all gather together under one banner if this one person does one thing, like the Mandalore. But then there's others that are seen, or they are basically they're being ruled by the Empire, so they can't really gather together and unify against that to do what they want to do. So again, it looks like they're becoming more individualistic with the characters. Like again, with Sabine Wren in the Rebels, she has to go off for a very specific reason, but it's more unique Mandalorians than what we were shown in the Clone Wars, basically, which was like a military aspect.
where they're all uniform colored and
very generic.
Yeah, very much so. One of the things that really interests me about this is I'm interested in the idea, especially in Marvel and Star Wars, of like different genre movies within what you already like within the storylines.
Yeah.
So like Guardians of the Galaxy is like a sci-fi, like, you know, it's a sci-fi movie. It's like a
comedy
action comedy.
It's a action comedy.
And actually focusing on being a comedy and not actually it also got funny bits. You know?
And then Winter Soldier is like a Cold War thriller. Like it's like an 1980s espionage movie essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have using Star Wars as an example, Rogue One isn't like, it's not a space opera, it's a war movie.
Yeah,
and like,
or like a heist.
I rewatched it recently, and I really like Rogue One.
Solo is more of a heist movie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was getting for some reason. No,
that's fine. So like, I'm really interested in the idea of them playing with like, okay, so like all of these happen at the same time, and they all kind of have the same flavor, but they're different genres of movie, and I'm really interested in that. And I think this TV show sounds like a Western to me.
Oh yeah.
And Star Wars definitely has like Western vibes to it, and especially Solo has a just kind of a like Han Solo has like a very cowboy vibe to him.
Just a little bit.
Like
hijacking a train and everything, stealing stuff.
Like there's a bunch of Western in Solo, but I feel like this, just hearing about this, is like, I want to see a TV show that's just the good, the bad, and the ugly in Star Wars, where you just have this like this badass mother effer who's just walking through like deserted towns and like into these like criminal underworlds and just like kicks ass. Like doesn't say that much, but is just like the coolest dude.
Right. I mean,
that you're ever going to encounter.
As far as the speaking part, that's kind of what Darth Vader was. He didn't say much, but whatever he...
Well, or Boba Fett. Boba Fett said almost nothing.
It's true, yeah.
And
we love better example, and it's actually Mandalorian.
He was the coolest guy in the entire series.
I hope they get this one right, because they had the chance with Phasma in the new Star Wars movies to be like that kind of character, and I feel like they basically butchered it. But with this one, it seems like he can be more unique. He's not tied to... From what I think, I don't think he's tied to anyone or anything in this. And again,
it'll be interesting to see how that, like, if there are ties that kind of really wrap it around the
what is he connected to, if there is anything, and what is his goal? Is he just a mercenary? Is he just trying to survive? Like, what is he going for, basically? And again, it looks like it's going to be more like a Western, because from the set images, it looks a lot like they are on Tatooine. I don't know if they are, but it seems like he's just wandering the streets, or there's like a cantina that he's probably going to go into. It's a Star Wars movie. He's going to be in a cantina.
The doors open.
Everybody stops drinking and playing and singing music and be like, oh.
You've got a Bith over there on the keyboard just like, what?
Well, this is a Star Wars alien, by the way, people.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Put that next to the nerds who didn't know what your intro was.
I'm really excited for the directors for the episodes, because we don't know which episodes they're directing, but we do have Dave Filoni, who is going to be directing one of the episodes at least. And again, he's a producer and director of Star Wars, the Clone Wars, Resistance, Rebels, and those are, well, I don't know a lot about Resistance, but Clone Wars has done pretty well. Rebels is decent from what I've heard, at least a little bit, and we'll see with Resistance. But he also did a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which, as you guys know me, I absolutely love.
And that's solid.
It's very good storytelling, so he does know how to tell a good story.
And that's by the way, especially more crucial in a TV series than a movie, because a movie you can get away with a lot more distractions, being like theatricals and action and all that stuff. TV series, if you do not have a good story, is just straight up going to fail. Yeah, there's no distraction that can keep you from that.
And you really got to tie like smaller arcs into larger ones and really like get a storyline.
It's so important,
nailed in there.
Yeah, looking at the directors, I am wondering if the feel of the episodes are going to be very different, because with other TV shows, I've noticed that they're able to stay pretty on level with tone, I suppose, even though they have different directors. But with this one, it seems like they have like kind of a mix and match because they have Dave Filoni, they have Bryce Dallas Howard, who I mostly know for being an actress. She was in Jurassic Park, and she was Gwen Stacy in Spider-Man 3. So
was she really?
She was.
Wow.
Yeah,
right.
she was in that one.
I guess I thought she.
Maybe
was
you blocked that out from your mind.
Well, she also doesn't look.
She doesn't have red hair.
She was super blonde.
Yeah, she's very blonde.
But no, that's weird.
They also have Taika Waititi, who directed Thor Ragnarok.
Okay.
Who's going to be directing an episode of this. So, thinking of the vibe that he did that.
It's kind of weird pulling in, talking about Star Wars and pulling in different people doing the same. Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, he's a great director. But I'm wondering what the vibe of this TV show is going to be and how the tone is going to be throughout the episodes.
I was going to say, I feel like if you want the tone to stay consistent, you might not want to hire Taika Waititi because he's not exactly known for
compliant,
dark, gritty stuff. Yeah. Are you going to go from like something that's very like down to earth, like you're having a scrap in a street, and then the next episode with Waititi just gonna be like a goofy like he goes into a bar and gets drunk, and
it's gonna be that weird spin-off episode that you pretend doesn't exist in the series.
It's like that one is just like
what was it, the Absorbaloff episode from Doctor Who?
It's funny you say. I was literally about to refer to Doctor Who as someone who deals with a lot of different directors, but has to stay with a certain style, and for the most part, are successful.
Fairly consistent. Like you get some real stinkers in there.
You really do.
Well, that makes me slightly nervous, but I can't help but still be kind of. I'm wondering.
It's definitely
what it's gonna
interesting.
Be like.
Yeah, it definitely makes me want to watch it more, but at the same time, it
makes me more anxious about it.
Huh.
Cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. Yeah, I've got that. I do think the production is going to be really good because. It's Star Wars, it's Disney, of course it's going to be like that.
The production quality is usually pretty good.
Usually.
I mean, ILM is known for groundbreaking visual effects. Whether or not they hold up after, let's say, 10 years.
Oh, I don't know,
15 years.
Star Wars Episode 1. But I've heard that the estimated budget is going to be $100 million, which is pretty good for a 10-episode, TV show season.
I mean, it's not Amazon's Lord of the Rings, which is what? Like
we still don't know
$500 million.
We talked about that on the Lost
ridiculous
podcast, and we don't know what's going on with that show.
Even though, we talked about
I don't know
what
if it's
little
Lord of the Rings or not, but
we talked what little there was to talk about it last week, and it's still not a lot. Yeah. So
we've talked about it. I think we heard that the Lord of the Rings, that Amazon was going to be making a Lord of the Rings show. Before we heard about this show that was going to be in production.
This is a more recent
we don't know anything about that one, but we already know a premise for this one, and it's in production right now. So what gives, Amazon?
I mean, I think... I want to say Disney has set a precedent recently for pushing out content at... we'll probably talk a little bit about this in the next segment, but at a increased rate than is perhaps advisable.
It's much more than what we used to get for Star Wars content.
So getting 1 or 2 movies a year in terms of Star Wars, I mean, they've kind of backed off on that a little bit. But, I mean, I think that speaks to how soon we're hearing about this. That they're just kind of they're pushing out content.
They're trying to get us excited, even though sometimes we haven't been very excited about Star Wars.
Yeah, it's difficult to say whether or not this is going to be successful on its own legs. Until we see stuff from it, I'm not really sure how it's going to land.
I don't know either. Again, I'm very excited just by the title and looking at the creators of it because.
It's got a lot of promise.
You've got Jon Favreau at the helm producing and writing for it, and he's done stuff he's done Iron Man, he's just done Chef. He did Iron Man 2, but I just want to say that it's probably not entirely his fault. I really don't think. Yeah, because they had to have a filler movie for the other Marvel movies, I'd say.
Well, I think he's even gone on record. I mean, we were having this conversation earlier where Chef, the movie that he made,
very good movie,
but the basic premise of the movie is he's a 5-star chef who's working in this restaurant, and he gets the premise of him working in the restaurant was that he gets to make his own menus, and then his the manager, the owner of the restaurant, was like, no, you're going to make, like, these are the things that people want, and so you're going to make these. And then while he's doing what his boss told him to do, a reviewer comes in and is like, this is bland and uninteresting, I'm not a fan. And so, like, it's a punishing review. And he's like, if I could just do what I wanted to do, I would have been able to make a good
impression
menu. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But and then so, like, after that, he goes and runs a food truck, and it's small, but he can do whatever he wants, right. And it's hugely successful. So, like,
that's kind of, I think that's a reflection of maybe what Jon Favreau is trying to say with what he's able to do.
Right. Like, he had a lot of freedom in the first Iron Man movie, and got to do pretty much. I mean, I don't know for sure.
He reinvented Iron Man.
It's pretty obvious that he kind of got to do whatever he wanted in the first Iron Man movie. Like, there wasn't a lot. Like,
they didn't know what to stop him from doing or what to tell him he should do because it was like
new territory.
And I think it's pretty obvious in the second Iron Man movie that there was a lot more producer input, and that's probably to the movie's detriment.
Also, really early on for Marvel movies, where they were still figuring out what makes a good Marvel movie,
right? They were
makes
still
a bad
trying to
Marvel
nail
movie.
the formula.
I think again they were just trying to fill up some time before the next Marvel movie.
Because that was their third movie, right? Like they had
kind of ish.
Iron Man,
no, it was
Hulk.
Iron Man and Hulk came out the same year,
but Hulk was from a different production.
Yeah, so to be fit, so that's technically
no. Actually, they're both. I mean, they might be different
Hulk
studios.
Was Paramount.
Nope, they're
Universal.
Universal?
It was distributed by Universal, but I think it's still Marvel Studios because they had Robert Downey Jr. in the end credits.
Right. It's definitely the most impact they had from a separate company other than their own, and it's the only one that has a little asterisk on it. I agree with you. I think that Marvel Studios was still in charge of it, but I feel like Universal also had input, whereas all of their other movies, zero input from outside sources.
That seems likely.
But yeah. Anything you want to add on to that? Or?
I guess I just say that I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I am kind of confused but excited by the directors.
That's fair.
Yeah, and again, Disney is trying to pump out a lot of stuff like at a very quick pace. Yeah, basically. With Star Wars beforehand, we would have maybe 3 or 4 years between each movie back when they were first coming out, and then it was maybe 2 years between each movie.
No, it's so
1977,
77, 80, 83, and then 99, 2002, and 2005.
Yeah.
So
it's 3 year spaces,
and now we're down to 2 year spaces in between the tentpole movies.
Yeah,
and then 2 years in. Well, we had Rogue One, and then we had Solo on alternating years, and even having 2 years in between the tentpole movies seemed like not enough time, because the major ingredient for movies, I think, is time to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And if you don't have time, you're going to make mistakes.
You wanna use that to catapult yourself into this last bit here?
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like that's a great
transition, people.
Perfect. And speaking of not having enough time, I would like to talk about let's do a retrospective of The Last Jedi, because it's been almost a year since it came out, and we all saw it multiple times, I think.
Yeah, I've seen it 3 times now, I believe.
I've seen it 3 times, but the third time was
times.
over the span of a couple of weeks where I kind of watched it, kind of didn't.
That's weird. I'm not sure.
It was on Netflix, okay? I'm sometimes I'll watch
fair
it.
enough.
I watched it twice in theaters and once on DVD.
Okay.
So there was a span between the second and third viewing, but the first 2 were in the same week.
All right, fair enough. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on the movie after having not seen it for a year?
You can go first.
After having a year to think about it.
I was personally worried because this was the first Star Wars movie I did not see. I can't remember if I saw... Oh, I did see... No, okay. So this was the first Star Wars movie that I didn't see launch date.
Okay.
Up to this point,
night.
yeah, I watched Rogue One and Force Awakens, both on their opening nights.
Yeah.
I wanted that hype, and I feel like that's also kind of really good to have in those movies.
Yeah.
This one, I didn't get around to it, and I wasn't late to it. I was in the beginning of the next week after the opening weekend. But that being said, just about all my friends had already seen it at that point because it was such a big deal. A lot of my friends shared concerns, so it brought my expectations of the movie down going into it.
Okay.
Having in that retrospect, I didn't have many complaints coming out of The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
If that wasn't the case, I'd have a lot more complaints coming out of it.
Yeah.
People lowered my expectations. I was watching the movie a lot more closely about inconsistencies and then just hard to follow things.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I was able to grasp the movie a lot better if I had not been warned previously.
Okay.
That being said, watching it a second time, I was only reaffirmed about my beliefs because hearing the controversy, I was sure, was it just the hype of seeing it for the first time and all these stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Watched it the second time. Nope, I was right, which is, I really think it's a great movie. It's definitely not a perfect Star Wars movie. I think that there is a plot that we all know what I'm talking about that's completely irrelevant and could just be taken out from the movie as a whole.
Yeah.
But besides that, I really liked how it was. I especially loved Luke Skywalker's portrayal in this movie.
Okay.
And that was, I feel like, really important, and that's a controversial point, but I really liked it, and I think that's really what drove the movie. And I really liked how well themed this movie was, which is something we've been missing ever since the prequel movies, you know? And yeah, I have some complaints, of course, but my general rundown is this was definitely a fantastic movie. It took risks, and I think most of those risks paid off in my eyes.
I would say, well, I want to point out, you and I both went and saw the movie at the same time. So
our first viewing, we just came out of the theater like, I don't know what I watched.
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember, because I got home here, and there was like a Christmas party going on, and everyone knew I went to see Star Wars. So I come in, and everyone's just like, so how was it? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know.
You were one of the people that made me concerned and lowered my expectations.
So I'm like, I can't tell you guys anything, because if I do, then it will spoil some stuff. So I was really confused about the movie when I first saw it. Second time around, I was able to basically, calm my nerd self a little bit while watching it.
And let's be clear, you're someone who has been very informed about the expanded universe and has seen all the movies. And
Gordon is too, so we were both going.
No, I know. I'm just putting this perspective, you're.
The nerd rage is strong in the shop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's no doubt about that.
So if you're someone who's listening is like, yeah, but I listened to, I watched all the movies, and on top of that, know all the expanded universe. Well, 2 of our 3 panelists also know that too. So just know that those opinions are validated.
I would call us relatively informed opinions.
Yeah,
I know a couple of things. So I was able to enjoy it the second time around. I'm like, all right, I'm getting past the shock of watching it the first time. So I didn't know what to look for, not what to sleep through, being the arc that you talked about.
What to sleep through? Ouch.
Yeah, I'm not wrong though.
No, I'm just saying, if you have to say that for a part of a movie, that's not good.
It's basically the part of the movie where you're just like, all right, this is the part where I go and take a bathroom break.
It is, exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, I think my first time watching it, I waited for that plot the arc to come back up, so I could take a bathroom break. I was like, okay, when they switch to this plot line, I'm going to go for a bathroom break because I do not care.
Yeah. So I enjoyed the movie second time around. In the last 10 months, I have been back and forth on this movie, basically, because I've listened a lot to different outlets. I've listened to a lot of people on YouTube. I've been reading articles. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Or you're right. Well, you're right. I'm not entirely sure what I feel.
In the moment watching the video, you're like, yes, and then you hear different opinions, but I also really agree with this person.
It's like when Kylo Ren just says, "I'm being torn apart." I'm just like, you know what? It's right. I feel it.
You're tearing me apart, Lisa.
Yeah. So, I was thinking about the movie. I need to watch it in its entirety in one sitting again, because watching it in spaces doesn't really help, I don't think. There's a lot of stuff that I do like it looks amazing. Some of the characters are absolutely great. Some of the characters I really, really hate. You guys know which characters I'm talking about. With Luke Skywalker, I feel like them taking a chance on his character was good. I appreciate what they did. The thing is that I think that hopefully everyone's seen The Last Jedi by now.
Yeah.
But I really, really think that they should have had more going on with him. like basically more time for him to do stuff, because they were like, oh, he's at the end of The Force Awakens for like 30 seconds, and oh, he's in this movie, but guess what? Now he's gone. So I feel like he should have had more of an arc than just being like, oh, well, the Jedi suck. Oh, I'll do one last thing and then I'll be done. And I know that they're gonna probably have him as a Force ghost in the new movie, or something like that, because Mark Hamill did confirm that he's in the new movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like him being on the island the entire time was not enough for me. I needed him to have more character growth, more of a progression from being like, oh, the Jedi suck, to, oh, there's some stuff that I can still do. Oh, I really need to do certain things. He didn't really train Rey. He told her like 2 or 3 things, and then she did some stuff herself, and then she left. He said that he's like, I have 3 things for you to learn. She never learned the 3rd thing. We forgot that he said that. It's like, you're right. There was 3 things, and he never taught the 3rd thing. We remember him like... Again, I'm ranting. So that's what I felt about the movie.
I will want to, on that note, I want to throw something back at you. What happened when Luke went for training with Yoda?
He jumped around and flipped, and he tried his hand at the Force, and he sometimes got it, sometimes he didn't, and then
left without being completely trained.
No, but he had also had at least a couple of years to be able to hold a lightsaber.
I think the major difference between Empire Strikes Back, or the training aspect of Empire Strikes Back and The Last Jedi is, so there are 2 things that I think are a problem. One is that they had Rey landing on the island at the end of Force Awakens, which means that it has to pick up immediately afterwards, or things have to have happened before the movie starts, right? Like, either you pick up immediately where it ends and go from there, or you have to be like, okay, she's been on this island and she's been training the entire time.
Which I would have appreciated. I think that...
Because all of the Star Wars movies... have a period of months or years in between the other movies.
This one kind of locked itself into that.
The other thing is, when they put one of the through line of the movie is, okay, we have a limited amount of time before the ship runs out of fuel, so everything that's going to happen has to happen within a 24-hour period. So she doesn't have time to get any meaningful training in before she narratively has to make it back to wherever she's going.
I'm pretty sure Luke had days training with Yoda, and Yoda was willingly training him.
Days, if not weeks.
Yeah, because...
It's just like unspecified amount of time, but it wasn't like...
Well, we don't know how long they were on Cloud City, Han and Leia. It was at least a little while, at least a couple days.
I mean, they were probably dicking around in space for a few days, and then took them a couple of days to get to Cloud City, and they were there for a couple of days. Maybe a week or 2.
Yeah, but at least he was being trained every single day, and Yoda was always constantly feeding him more and more information, as opposed to Luke, who was like, I'll say some stuff, and then crabby stuff about the Jedi. And then I'll say some stuff, and more crabby stuff. And, oh, you fell down a hole, and then had a vision. What gives? I don't know what's going on. And, yeah, it just didn't feel like consistent with her... I don't think that Rey was really trained. It didn't feel like she was trained in that movie, as opposed to Luke, who we see him constantly training, constantly learning. He's learning how to use the telekinesis part of the Force, and also look inwards and use the ability to see beyond what he can see. With Rey, there wasn't a lot.
But to be fair, the training with Yoda didn't seem to be particularly involved itself.
I feel like not having seen Empire Strikes Back recently, in comparison, I feel like you're glorifying that training experience a little bit more.
We literally watched it this year.
Yeah, in February, but that's
recent.
All I'm saying is I think you're glorifying part nostalgia. I think you are glorifying the original training sequence between Luke and Yoda. I don't think a lot happened there either, and he left before Yoda finished as well, based off of Luke's own stubbornness.
At least Yoda told him stuff that was meaningful. He's like, hey, don't do this, stop it, and Luke did it anyway.
I think you can say the same thing about Luke, though. Like, he was teaching her stuff, but he wasn't teaching her specific techniques, which I think is where the time aspect comes into it. Like, I think he was imparting lessons to her, whether or not she implemented it personally, she at least heard what he had to say.
Because Yoda gave no lightsaber training. Let's be clear on that.
Yeah, no, he was not about that. Well,
not anymore.
We thought he wasn't about that lightsaber life, but
I guess he was in the prequels.
Yeah. Maybe he retired.
But again,
a lot of time passed.
Apparently he did.
I think that Luke could have been learning some form of sword fighting or some at least learning it between episode 4 and episode 5. At least learning techniques.
Probably practiced a little bit, but there wasn't really anywhere for him to learn it from.
Well, you saw Luke practicing.
I'm sure there's some sort of
in between
internet in Star Wars. You can look up videos, right?
There's the Star Wars
how
YouTube.
to swing a blade.
The HoloNet. Watching holodramas about the Jedi.
Oh yeah,
which totally would have been a thing in the Empire.
I totally want to see the Star Wars version of YouTube now.
Please, yes. I think we've already kind of seen it in the Star Wars special. But we can talk about that.
No.
Going back to
don't go there.
Edit out that part. Last Jedi, though.
I think I think a lot of people that are complaining about Luke specifically, which is one of the biggest parts of this movie and all the complaints, is that people were complaining that they didn't see the hero that Luke, especially based off the expanded universe, was supposed to be at this point. That being said, my argument is that Luke did exist, just not in this movie. And I think the reason for that is because that's what we expected Luke to do. How fun, we already knew that Luke was going to be the big hero and the person re-leading the surgeons of Jedi.
Yeah.
Did we really need to see that? They kind of inferred that with the flashbacks.
Yes.
I get that.
I did want to see that.
Anecdotal here.
It would have been really cool,
But we are past that point now. We're at the stage where during that process of Luke being the head honcho Jedi, the new Yoda per se, he has now gone through a process of something bad happened with directly involving him that he feels no longer worthy to be that head honcho person anymore, and now has had this recession of, I think the Jedi are too strict, I think there's practices that are outdated, and there's all these stuff, and has secluded himself from all this. And I feel like that's a very realistic process to go through that makes a lot of sense and is, in my opinion, a lot more interesting than just seeing what we expected from Luke Skywalker. Yes, fulfilling as a nerd and wanting to see that come to fulfillment, I get it. I really do, but at the same time, I feel like we saw a much more intriguing arc of Luke's story that we didn't see coming, but makes sense still.
I think part of it is because I think they're kind of backed into a corner in a lot of ways because they tied the new trilogy to the old characters, and so they have to have all this stuff that happens in between that they can't really, they can't tell the stories of what happens in between because they're stuck with these older people playing the characters.
No, well, it's 30 years between the events of Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens.
Right, exactly.
I don't want, going back, I want to point out is that with A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and all that, that was a story that we had on its own, and they said, but there's some stuff that happened previously. And in the previous ones, we know what's going to happen in the future, but it's telling a story of how that happens, and then it's and then there's this reign of the Empire. But with this one, it's Return of the Jedi, and then it jumps 30 years, so we had that space in between that we don't know a lot about. We know some things, but they leave it to the movies to try and explain what happens.
And the books.
You're gonna have to read the books too.
So one complaint that I've heard that I kind of agree with is, The Force Awakens sets a bunch of stuff up. It hands out a bunch of plot threads,
which I was very excited for.
It's okay, this is really interesting. I'm interested in seeing where they go with this thing. I want to know what happens here, and then in a lot of what The Last Jedi does, I feel cuts off a bunch of threads that we were
They also cut off a bunch of the characters too that were really interesting.
So, Snoke gets set up as the big bad guy in The Force Awakens.
Very mysterious.
Very mysterious. We don't know where he came from. I mean, the whole
unknown regions counts as we don't know where he came from.
Did he come from the unknown regions?
Yep.
Okay, so we don't know why he's in charge.
Fair.
He's the one guy who isn't screaming all the time. That's probably why.
I mean, that's pretty valid. There is a lot of screaming happening in the First Order.
There is one thing that I've noticed, or something that somebody pointed out on YouTube that I noticed, was that with the Empire, they are all very regulated, very controlled. They are they're basically like all the leaders. They are very aware.
Calm.
Yeah, very calm. Like there's Darth Vader. He's calm and collected, but he shows his anger in other ways. He's not yelling and screaming and throwing his lightsaber about. There's Tarkin, he's very in control, very posh. He's like, this and this and this.
And just think about when he was angry, he didn't even lash out. He was just like, oh yeah, you want to keep talking while I'm force choking you? Okay, let's bring it back down.
He's in control, but he's letting his emotions flow. He's channeling what he's doing a very specific way. With these ones, they are all out of control. They're yelling like little babies. Like you've got
there's very little discipline.
Including Kylo, by the way.
Kylo, he's a much better character in The Last Jedi, in my opinion, but he's not like the character that I was expecting because of The Force Awakens, I guess. Okay. Because The Force Awakens went from one character kind of personality to another character personality once he took off the helmet. But he's still a really great character in that one. But he's also yelling a lot. He's not a person that, gives you a sense of confidence or like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna lead us to victory.
He's not particularly scary, which is one of the things. Like he's not menacing, which is something that Darth Vader excelled at
he will kill you, but you don't know. He's not. It's not like he's unpredictable on when.
Yeah,
I'd say.
Oh crap.
And with Hux, General Hux, how is that guy, General?
Okay, one thing I would like to say, in regards to Snoke. Another one of the biggest complaints about this movie is that, granted, he had another movie, but Emperor Palpatine, with just the original 3 movies, didn't know where he came from, didn't know why he was in charge, didn't have a lot of plot development, and just was killed.
But here's the thing. In Star Wars, as it was created initially, a lot of what George Lucas would do is he would reference stuff and then not explain it. Because it's supposed to be like a lived-in world where people aren't constantly explaining stuff to other people because they already know what the context is. So if you just have these like throwaway things like, terms for objects or things that happened in the past, or like everybody else in the universe already knows what happened. The thing is, there's a point A and a point B. So like in the original trilogy, you don't have to explain anything that happens. There is an empire. There used to be a republic, and the empire took over. That much is,
clear
narratively, makes sense. The emperor is referenced in the first movie.
Yeah, it's like basically taking control of the Senate completely, and it made it completely obsolete.
I am the Senate.
So you don't encounter the Emperor. You just hear him referenced in the first movie, and that's enough because you have the people that work for him, and you don't need to know how he became Emperor. But the thing is, once you complete that narrative arc, the Empire's like we don't know what happened to the Empire, like.
Yeah.
Were they supposedly all on the second Death Star? So like, there's no more Imperial forces.
Well, when you look at
how did we get from the Empire being disbanded to the First Order rising and Snoke being in charge?
Well, I'd say we don't know much about the second part of that, but the first part is like we do know from comic books and books themselves and video games. Basically the ending of the Empire. They're basically like scattered and they're trying to gather one more time, which is over Jakku, which is like the remains of the battle, and that's where we find Rey in the new movie,
Force Awakens.
Yeah, and that's some of that. Well, actually, I'd say a lot of that is explained in Battlefront 2, the video game,
which is canon, by the way.
Which is canon. Yeah.
But the thing is, I feel like if the major characters shouldn't have mysteries associated with them that necessitates going to the expanded universe to find out the answers to the questions.
That's fair.
Like if there's a major character in the book and you don't know why like they're there, it should be dealt with in the movie, and you shouldn't have to go elsewhere to find out why.
That's fair.
I'd say like there should be an actual character in the movie that you can understand, that you can like sort of know stuff about them because you've watched the movie, and then the icing on the cake is the other stuff, like the expanded universe, like the lore behind them, basically. But you should have enough that explains the character so that you basically know who they are, what they are about, where they come from, and you know what they're trying to do.
Yeah. I will say this: there are a fair number of aspects to The Last Jedi that I thoroughly enjoyed. I think Luke's arc, while narrative, like timeline-wise, I think the entire movie suffers from the 24-hour time limit that got put on it, which I think that is one of the major issues. Like the main arc, or like the B plot of like the fuel running out.
It's weird because it
chasing.
starts out as the A plot, and then the other subplots take control, and then we all come back united under that one plot.
With the other movies, we didn't feel like we were being rushed. We were just watching a story. With this one, we know we're running out of time. There's a specific time frame for certain things to happen.
But the thing is, so there's a way to do it where it doesn't feel contrived, and I feel like they didn't quite nail it. So like in A New Hope, you have, once the Empire figures out where the Rebel base is,
right,
they're like, well, now we have
that's when the clock is ticking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not ticking the entire movie, and I think that's
I was about to say is like that's the difference, is that the time limit of that was for the third act specifically, where this is for almost from the beginning of the movie. You know, it gets set in the first act is when this timer starts.
And the thing is, I don't know if you guys know this, but in the original cut of A New Hope, they're not even, like, the Death Star battle doesn't have Yavin as the backdrop. That was added in afterwards, not by George Lucas, but by his wife. So the fact that the Death Star is closing in on Yavin, and there's that ticking time clock about getting this done, isn't even in the original cut of the movie. So like the movie,
so it
wasn't
a point
made
for them to try and get over there. They're just like, if it's in view, then they can get to it already.
That changes a lot for the context of it. They would have been
so like
it wouldn't nearly have been intense. There would be no.
The rest of the movie isn't a build up to this third act time limit. The time limit was added on after the fact. The fact that it makes it really like intense is a testament to the editing skills of George Lucas's wife, whose name I don't currently remember. Ex-wife.
Mrs. Lucas.
I think he had.
He didn't give her a lot of credit.
So where was I? Talking about time limits. So I feel like that aspect of it doesn't really lend itself to having a. Like, I feel like you need to have more time in the movie. Like, all the other Star Wars movies take place over the course of multiple days. And this one, we literally have a 24-hour window, which...
It might work for one part of the story, but for the other parts, it doesn't work, I'd say.
I think that's where the problem arises.
Like, that affects greatly Rey and Luke on the island.
I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot in Force Awakens by having Rey get to the island at the end of the movie, rather than have it be, you know, the second scene, like her getting there, the second scene.
Maybe it could have been her flying away towards the coordinates, or her coming right across.
Kind of like in A New Hope, when Lando's like sailing off to find Han. And the other thing is, like, I have this issue, and I think Marvel movies are kind of a culprit in this, where I feel like it's worked out for them to a certain extent, but I feel like the timing of their humor and the flavor of it doesn't necessarily work in the movie or in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, they're going off of the Joss Whedon playbook of, you know,
snappy humor during scenes where you don't need it.
Well, I mean, I think Joss Whedon,
he knew how to utilize it.
He knew how to utilize it, and I think other directors are doing it poorly. I feel but humor in places where it shouldn't be is a major peeve. But not necessarily just in The Last Jedi. I think Force Awakens suffers from it a little bit as well. But so humor in the wrong spot is kind of is a gripe.
I don't think Rogue One had that problem, really.
No, and it wasn't really... Rogue One had funny moments, but it wasn't supposed to be a funny movie.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And it had a character who could be really sarcastic, which worked.
Like, the tone was consistent, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I feel like the tone in The Last Jedi was like, okay, it's either super serious or it's like weird, like it's weird.
Well, yeah, because what I was talking about, the theme was like making mistakes.
Yeah.
And those mistakes having severe consequences, you know.
But then you and I get that, like, there's weird, like, bizarre stuff that happens in, like, the original movies or the prequel trilogy, and I feel like the prequel trilogy, like, using that as an example isn't really great because
that's why I've been referring to the original.
We had a lot of weird stuff.
But like there's weird stuff that happens, but it's contextual. Like it's like D&D as an example. If there's a lot of weird stuff that can happen in a D&D game, but if it makes sense within the universe, like if the spells are used the way they're supposed to, weird stuff happens, but it makes sense because it's within the framework that it's supposed to be. But if you're doing stuff like, I don't know, you're bringing in pop culture references from the outside, it's a lot of fun, but it doesn't fit in with what you already have.
I think I get what you're talking about, like the one scene where Poe makes your mom joke.
Makes your mom a joke in the very beginning. Regardless
Funny,
of whether...
but it's weird.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to start off with. And Luke throwing his lightsaber, like, over his shoulder... That's
trying to get a reaction from the audience, I feel like.
Right. I feel like a major part of a lot of the movie... People, I think you were saying that it was great because it didn't follow your expectations. Was that something?
I feel like the lightsaber was representing our expectations, and Luke took it and just went yeet.
But the thing is, I feel like there are ways to how do I want to?
There was a different way to do that same
There's a time and place for humor and a certain kind of humor.
Well, that's not. I mean, that's true, but that's not actually my point. My point is that there are ways to subvert your expectations while not making fun of you for having them.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah,
and that I think is the major issue.
That one was kind of a punch in the face.
Yeah. Overall, I don't know. I feel like the movie is beautiful. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous. I think there are some story plots that don't make sense. There's some stuff that doesn't really pan out. The Rey and Kylo Ren dynamic, I think, was great. The Rey and Luke dynamic, I think, worked out. I think they probably should have had more time in the movie for all that to play out.
To be fair, I feel like almost all of the issues that we talked about, a majority of it could have been fixed by taking out the casino arc. Taking that out could have solved a lot.
But still, we're limited to the time frame.
Yes, I'm saying that's one that couldn't have been addressed. But as far as you could make better use of that small time by having more time to explain stuff within that short time, if that makes sense.
Right.
So a lot of the complaints is not only are they shooting themselves in the foot by putting a time limit on how much time is in this movie, but on top of that, they have 3 arcs going on, so they don't even a lot of time within those arcs to talk about what's going on.
Right.
So if you take in the casino arc out of that and having only 2 arcs going on, really,
which I think is pretty consistent with the other movies in the series,
then you would have had a lot of time to make up for the fact that there's only 24 hours.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we're not going to solve all the universe's problems.
At least not the Star Wars universe.
Segment. Well, if given the opportunity, we might. But
maybe. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about Star Wars more.
Yeah.
I'm very good at that.
Very good.
Or at least very good at ranting about the stuff.
We could rant about Star Wars all day long.
Yeah.
So easy. All right. Well, with that, I just noticed that you had a Boba Fett.
By the way, when talking about Mandalorians, I don't know if the camera's still working.
I don't know. I was talking about Mandalorians, but when I do, I drink out of my Star Wars
Mandalorian cup.
So
Boba Fett mug.
My Boba Fett.
Well, thank you for joining us on this episode. Until next time, stay kind, geeks.